Euromaxx highlights. And here's your host, Karin Helmstedt.
Greetings and welcome to our highlights of the past week, which this time around included these and other stories. Brave New World, a famous Frankfurt museum, revamps its digital profile. Saving the world, why bicycles from sustainable materials are all the rage. And Surreal World, the spectacular images of photographer Pierre Winther. Well, it was in the year 1815 that Johann Friedrich Städel, a Frankfurt banker and merchant, made a key stipulation in his will. His considerable art collection was to be housed in a museum that was open to all the citizens of Frankfurt. Well, in so doing, he laid the cornerstone for Germany's oldest museum foundation. And to celebrate its 200th anniversary this year, the Städel's new digital expansion enriches far beyond the bounds of the building itself.
For its 200th birthday, the Städel Museum in Frankfurt has given itself some impressive gifts, major special exhibitions, and new acquisitions, like this picture by American painter Philip Guston. And a special highlight, a digital collection where the Städel presents its masterpieces online with a lot of additional information. The plan is for 1,500 works from the collection to be presented here by the end of the year. The driving force behind the digital renewal is the museum's director, Max Hollein.
I hope
the Städel will continue to develop with so many people contributing. I hope that it will stay a museum by citizens, for citizens, and also become an institution that innovates in bringing art to the citizens. So in that spirit, we're expanding our collection and our museum, as well as expanding our communication in the digital realm.
In the physical realm of the museum, there's currently a major exhibition titled Monet and the Birth of Impressionism. It features 50 paintings by the popular Impressionist artist. The works by the French artist are closely connected to the history of the Städel, which bought paintings by Claude Monet early on. The museum hopes the show will draw more than 100,000 visitors by the end of June.
Of course, we want to reach as many people as possible with our exhibitions, which take several years to prepare. So we communicate the exhibitions in a certain way. In the end, we're not so much interested in maximizing the number of visitors as in reflecting our collection through major and also smaller exhibition events.
And there's a premiere for the Monet show. With the Digitorial, visitors can find out about artists online, either from home or possibly on their way to the museum. The museum's credo is that art should be accessible to all, through as many channels as possible. And just recently, they've launched a Städel app for mobile devices. It recognizes major works from the collection and provides visitors with additional information that can be called up not only in the museum, but elsewhere too.
The app helped me a lot because I got a look at the pictures that I could expect to see here beforehand and find out a bit about them online. There's so much to see here that you don't really have the time to spend a long time with one painting, and then only find out about it when you're standing in front of it.
I downloaded the app to get information about the museum itself, as well as the exhibition. And of course, so I wouldn't have to carry around more stuff, just to have access to the audio guide.
I hope it provides what the audio guide provides, and maybe lets you be more independent, so that you can look at things when you want to.
But the Städel especially wants to score points with its new digital collection. The platform invites viewers to let themselves be guided from one picture to another by associations with a similar mood or theme, in a kind of digital stroll through art history. For instance, if you enter the keyword sword, you see all the paintings featuring a sword.
I don't think it's really an alternative to visiting an actual museum. But it is a very different experience than the museum itself. It's a way of imparting information about art, artistic contexts, and detailed knowledge. It's also a way of telling about what art and artworks have to do with us. It tells us what kinds of interesting connecting lines emerge from that.
The Städel, of course, also maintains an active social media presence on social networks such as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The museum also regularly posts clips about artworks and interviews with artists to YouTube. 3 employees deal exclusively with the Städel's social media presence.
To a certain extent, the social media channels are oriented towards a younger audience, but not exclusively. I think that our YouTube channels are in demand with an audience that includes all generations. And Instagram is certainly a format that's much more widely active.
With these digital innovations, the museum has expanded to include a virtual location. But it's not supposed to replace an actual visit to the Städel. Rather, it's meant to provide visitors with a new way to experience art.
Well, he's a master of observation and of the smallest details. British street artist Slinkachu actually only wears that title because his art first comes to be on the street itself. Well, otherwise, he's also a photographer, a concept and installation artist. And his newest project, Miniaturesque, takes his signature Little People to new havens all over London, where you're well advised to watch where you tread.
A bathing scene. A mounted policeman. A riverside adventure. For his new series, Slinkachu spent the past year installing and photographing these scenes in unexpected corners of London.
For this series, I was interested in finding the small pockets of nature within a city, like the weeds and the moss, and trying to make those look beautiful, almost like a landscape painting or photograph. It's only when you pull out you realise the context.
The Andipa Gallery in London has exhibited works by renowned contemporary artists such as Damien Hirst and Banksy since 1967. They first started working with Slinkachu in 2007, and since then they've regularly shown his unusual artworks in exhibitions around the world.
I think Slinkachu's work is very difficult to label, partially because it's fairly unique, and partially because it straddles so many different genres. So it's photography, it's installation, it's miniaturism, it's street art, it's urban art. It really is quite very difficult to define.
Slinkachu's artworks uses figurines which he paints and moves into position. His props are everyday objects. To find the perfect location for each scene, he often has to walk around London for several hours. Once he's found a suitable new home for his little people, he creates the scene, photographs it, and leaves the characters to their fate. But many passers-by don't notice his work at all.
They look very cool because they're small and unusual. But I wouldn't have noticed them if you didn't point them out.
So I just love the skateboarders and the little story that's told. You know, one waiting and one skateboarding on this little abandoned orange peel.
So how does Slinkachu feel about leaving his creations behind?
A lot of the time in my images, I'm trying to portray the figures as being lost and alone, and by walking away and leaving them, by abandoning the characters myself, I'm kind of a cause of that, and I'm helping that happen, which I quite like. It ties in with the whole idea of my images, I guess.
Since 2006, Slinkachu has left his figures in many cities around the world, like this one in front of the Reichstag building in Berlin, and this one in Moscow. For his new series, he returned to London. This installation explores cliches about different areas of the city, as well as landmarks and political events like the 2011 riots. He also creates scenes for charities like Britain's Royal National Lifeboat Institution.
I used to say that I didn't think my work was that political, but I have to say as I've got older, it has crept into the work more. I don't set out to do it too much, and I try and leave the images relatively ambiguous.
Visitors, young and old, have come from around the world to admire Slinkachu's miniatures. His tiny figures have thousands of fans, but the scale and complexity of his work is growing, like this new installation. So what does the future hold for his little people?
I think the next bigger show that I'll do, solo show, might not necessarily use the miniature figures, but the idea I've got in my head still uses miniatures in some way, so just not necessarily figures.
For now, Slinkachu fans should pay attention to the city around them, and maybe they'll discover one of the little people on their own.
The bicycle, as such, used to be a piece of leisure sport equipment, but given the increasing number of cyclists in cities all across Europe, it's been clear for quite a while now that they're a primary mode of transport for many. As designs are morphing and optimized, they're also becoming a status symbol, and seeing as sustainability is the big buzzword these days, green designs are sprouting up absolutely everywhere.
This is Alkmaar, north of Amsterdam. Bicycles are the favorite mode of transport here. Most of them are classic Dutch bikes. But there are other kinds too. Like this chunky-looking bow bike made of solid oak. It's the brainchild of Dutch designer and boat builder Jan Gunneweg.
Every piece is different. So every bicycle is also your own bicycle. You will recognize them in a lot of different bicycles because that's your structure on the bike.
Gunneweg built his first bow bike in 2012. Since then, he's produced more than 250 of these durable machines. They weigh about 20 kilos and cost around 1,500 euros. This is a brand new bow bike with an electric motor.
I really like to bring people closer to nature, especially in the city, because I think they don't recognize them where we came from, and we will be much happier when we are close to nature.
Bikes made of sustainable raw materials are growing in popularity. The Amsterdam sandwich bikes comes in a flat pack. Britain Andy Martin's bike is made of bentwood, originally destined for German furniture maker Tornet. And the handmade Waldmeister bike from southern Germany is made completely by hand out of beechwood. Bremen bike builder Tobias Meyer has gone for a more exotic material, bamboo. The frames weigh 2 to 3 kilos and are as robust as metal ones. Tobias's bamboo bike is a far cry from the average bike, so it is certainly an eye-catcher.
The rims and pedals and so forth are all made of metal, so it probably rides well. Might be lighter than normal.
Meyer uses steel lugs and other metal components for his bikes. The German has been making them for 5 years. It can take hours to choose the right bamboo poles for a frame.
If you look at these two poles, for example, they look pretty similar in cross-section, but this one has a much thinner wall thickness. That means that despite looking similar, these poles would give a completely different ride. If I take this pole, the frame would be stiffer, and this one would be gentler.
It takes him a week to build a bike. The most time-intensive part of the process is filing down the poles so they fit and joining them with flax tape. He sells his bikes for 2,700 euros or more. His brand, Faserwerk, includes all the usual styles. All bikes from Faserwerk are custom-made. The unique appearance and the environmentally friendly materials are just 2 reasons why people buy them, in spite of the price. It doesn't get much cheaper than this bike made of recycled cardboard by Israeli engineer Izhar Gavni. It only costs €7 to make. And the Spanish firm Lola H uses old car parts to make its bikes. Back to Alkmaar, where Jan Gunneberg hopes that his sustainably built bike will have a long-term impact on those who ride it.
I really like that people just relax on this bike. Be moved by nature, and I think it's a wonderful slogan for this bike.
Whether it's made of wood, bamboo or scrap, designers are making green transport even greener with every new idea.
Well, it was about 30 years ago that Pierre Winther took a stroll through his native Copenhagen when he saw a shadow formation that stopped him in his tracks. Now, he was bent on capturing it somehow, and so he went out and bought a camera and proceeded to teach himself the art of photography. Well, today he's one of the most sought-after commercial photographers and filmmakers in the world, and he seldom gives interviews, but we were lucky to catch him in a rather obliging mood.
Pierre Winther's trademark are elaborately staged surreal worlds. His spectacular images, like this famous one with a real tiger shark, unite art and advertising. With each new project, he opens a door on a unique world. Soon, the Babelsberg Film Studio near Berlin will provide the Danish photographer and filmmaker with a venue to try out his ideas.
I want to tell a story in one shot. So this is where it started. I want to say, but in my head, something has happened before, something will happen afterwards. But I want to tell the viewer the one story in one shot. This is a little bit what is the general thing for my pictures.
Winther is planning a short film, his first project made in Germany. As usual, he first develops his ideas and then looks for financial backers. The preparations in Babelsberg are likely to take nearly a year.
The whole idea is to use this stage here is to build up a world, like a kind of a fake world, which still has a lot of reality to it. And this is going to be the main scene. So we're going to have roads here where the car can drive through and all this kind of thing.
For the first time, an opulent collection of photographs gives an overview of his works. Over the past 30 years, Pierre Winther has advanced to become one of the world's most sought-after commercial photographers. Working for brands like Nike, Levi's, Dunhill or Boss, he's not only shot photos, but also turned his ideas into films. He's received many awards, including the Grand Prix of the Cannes Lions Festival, the Oscar of the advertising world. His latest work is a commercial for a Finnish vodka brand.
So it's always me building up a world for this brand. So it's not like the typical kind of thing. So you can always say it's a little bit more like as an art project would start. You have an idea, and then this art project would have a logo in the end. For instance, the car crash picture, the guy riding on the shark, you know, from Levi. It's advertising pictures, but which we sell on the art market. Because it has that standard. So for me, it's very important to actually say, the advertising work I do has to have that kind of level that you want to hang it on your wall in the end.
And that comes at a price. Winther's work methods are reminiscent of big Hollywood productions. In fact, that's where most of his works were made. Up to 80 people are involved in producing the perfect photograph. The elaborate sets require huge amounts of money. Winther typically has a budget of several €100,000. Like here to photograph basketball star Dirk Nowitzki hanging from a helicopter.
Every project is a challenge, like one way or another. It's definitely not the easy street I chose there.
Winther reworks his photographs, but he doesn't manipulate them digitally. That's a matter of principle for him.
I built it up the same way I've always done it for 20 years. I have the car physically in the studio or outside. I have the people standing in front of it and the background. So from production point of view, I'm more expensive to work with because it requires a lot more money to build it this way. But I think it's also much more rewarding, and I think also you can see whether a picture is done for real or not. You know, I think the people, it has another energy.
The pictorial worlds of Pierre Winther, blurring the boundaries of art and commerce.
Well, finally, we're off to Sweden, and more precisely to the province of Småland in the southern part of the country. Now, it's famous for its pristine nature and also as the birthplace of furniture giant IKEA. But Småland is also the setting for some of Sweden's best-loved children's stories, which makes it an appealing destination for young ones and old ones.
The lakes and forests in southern Sweden's Småland region, its pristine nature. In between our villages where time seems to stand still, it's a world right out of a picture book. That's no wonder, because some very famous children's books are set here, in and around the small town of Vimmerby. They're the stories of Swedish writer Astrid Lindgren. The author was born in Vimmerby in 1907. Some of her stories are set even earlier.
Astrid wrote different stories set in the time of her father, for example, and they go back about 150 years.
These times are brought back to life in Astrid Lindgren's World, a theme park on the outskirts of Vimmerby. The settings of Lindgren's books are replicated according to descriptions in her stories.
Here we bring the fairy tales to life. We turn them into reality. Here the children meet different characters from 9 or so books.
The most famous, the cheeky red-haired girl Pippi Longstocking. Theater performances are held all day in the park during summer, rain or shine. Other characters like Emil in Lönneberga appear. And Ronja, the robber's daughter, is there to meet children and parents alike.
It's childhood memories for me as well. So that's and come and visit it. It's wonderful.
It's the legacy of Astrid Lindgren, and it's good stories for all ages.
It's not just children's stories that testify to the imagination of Småland's inhabitants. So too does the glass art from the Glasriket, or Kingdom of Crystal. Glass blowers started settling here in the 17th century. Småland resident Bo Lustad explains why this poor, heavily wooded area became a glass center.
It took enormous amounts of wood to heat the furnaces where you make the glass, so that was one important reason. And you also had the sand around here which is the main ingredient in glass, so you could take the sand from the nature, you could take the wood and heat the furnaces.
The glass hut in Transjö is one of the smallest factories shared by several glassblowers. Master glassblower Marianne Degener and Lars Skullberg are working on a multi-layered, multicolored vase. Småland glass attracts 1 million visitors each year, yet the industry is shrinking. The oldest still in operation is the glass manufacturer in Kosta, a town with a population of 1,000. It doesn't just create art, but practical glassware that's sold around the world. The glassblowers use traditional methods, which take years of training.
Most of the people who's left here has started here, not at school. So today you can go at glass school, but when I started, we started as apprentice and worked our way up.
The Kosterboda Art Hotel is considered a jewel. Its modern glass art has been attracting tourists since it opened in 2009. The hotel's cobalt blue glass bar is an experience in itself. And the pool is likely the only one worldwide where glass fish bob in the water and treasures made of glass can be found at the bottom. And so it's a mixture of fantasy, tradition, and pristine nature that attracts visitors from around the world to Småland.
Just in case you happen to miss us over the rest of the weekend, be sure to visit our website, and you can find us at dw.de/English/Euromaxx anytime. Well, that's all for this edition of our Euromaxx highlights. Hope you enjoyed it, and until we meet again, all the best from us here in Berlin, and thanks for watching. Tschüss and bye-bye.